Joe, one of the most ridiculous stories revolving college football I've ever heard in my life. Now, I am not saying it's not true because, Joe, as two Italians do a college football podcast here, I do believe that there are situations where this has happened. Okay.
Sure.
I'm not saying that it's never happened or will never happen. But in case you missed it, there was a former Vanderbilt quarterback. Okay. I guess, Joe, what was it? Sometime last week? I forget.
It was the very end of last week. It was Thursday, Friday, I believe.
But Mo Hasan, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing his name here, but that he was approached at Jason Aldean's bar and by the Italian mob, and they were going to give him $300,000 to throw some games. If the kid winds up dead in the next 2 weeks, maybe he was telling the truth. This sounds like throwing Vandy games. Vandy.
He was the backup quarterback. He was he had 17 passing attempts when he was at Vanderbilt. 17 passing attempts. This is the biggest load of bullshit that I've ever seen for a fake story. Look, they've been doing that podcast, the Momentum podcast or whatever it is, where they're, it's kind of like Bussin' with the Boys, the way that it looks like where they shoot it in that van style setup, whatever the hell it is.
I've never seen it.
This is probably one of the most desperate ploys for viewership attention that I've ever seen. He needs to understand that even if this was real, the reason why nobody would believe it because of the context of who he was as a player, the school that he was playing at that never had any impact in the SEC. And he also tried to chime in and say, well, some of you guys haven't heard of prop bets before. You have to play to participate and get a prop bet. You have to be on the field in order to get a prop bet. He didn't elaborate enough to say that if he was approached to then approach his teammates to do things, none of that stuff was brought up. All he said is that he was approached by the mob and he was offered $300,000 and that apparently other guys were offered as well. He is either making this up or some dude, and I think this is probably likely, probably recognized him in a bar and was trying to mess with them and thought it was funny. Those are the only two options here. There's no shot in hell that anyone thought to themselves, let's go talk to the backup quarterback at Vanderbilt. He's going to make us some money.
I'm going to be careful, and I got to be careful on how I say this.
Okay.
Joe, I told you about a story that of my own personal volition that I've had in Nashville. Okay, telling somebody that I was a country music producer and that one of my buddies told her that my dad owned Sony. Okay. That's the vibe around Nashville. All right. Everybody is fake it to you. Not everybody. There are people there that it's fake it till you make it. I know this person. I know that person. This is what I know. This is what I don't know. A drunk guy in the bar goes up to a dude and says, I'm going to give you $300,000 to play some bets. I don't think it's unrealistic that somebody, like you mentioned, messes with him. I've been to Nashville 6 times in my life. Each one of my buddies have made up a story to pick up a very attractive young lady and to potentially make them their wives. Okay, that's all that happened there. I do think that there could be some reality to it. However, how stupid do you have to be? Because we're in a place in college athletics and just sports in general, okay, where you make a comment like that for one reason and you mention it probably for clicks. Now, as someone who has been in court thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of times, okay, when it comes to my previous life, this is, like you mentioned, the biggest load of bullshit that I've ever heard. The mob does not work that way. People that are sophisticated don't work that way. And Joe, are we just going to sit here and believe that a backup quarterback was approached? Now, like you mentioned, could there have been a situation where that he wanted, you give some of your teammates to do something? I don't know, but it's just one of the wilder stories that you're ever going to hear, and in no way humanly possible. Now, if this would have been at Georgia, if this would have been at at Florida, LSU. Like if he would have played anywhere else in the SEC, I'd have been like, you know what? There might be some truth to it. But Vanderbilt, him being a Vanderbilt quarterback,
Backup
for me. Backup ends it for me. Completely ends it. Because nobody in their right mama cares about it. Now, I will tell you, I have a lot of uncles. A lot of uncles. They don't care about college football as much as I do. They care more about the NFL, NBA, NHL. They're not. They have gotten bigger now into college athletics. Okay, it's their fandom. I'll call it that. But they're pro dudes. They always have been.
I
read between the lines there.
Sure. I stand by though that what I'm saying here. He's a young guy. He's younger than me, hosting a podcast. A lot of times these younger guys in their early 20s lack the discretion of knowing what's appropriate and inappropriate to do in terms of inflating. Let's use the word inflating, embellishing a little bit the details of a story to make it a little bit more compelling and interesting. I have no intention of going and watching the full episode. And I don't think anyone should waste their time watching the full episode. I saw the clip. I don't know the entire context if he said something before or after the statement that was clipped and that was ran with. But what I do know is that we're sitting here talking about him, and his show got a lot of brand recognition, a lot of buzz because of this. There's a lot of naive people out there that are going to think that something like this is real. There's a lot of people who don't care, who are just going to see it and not really care to question it or not. Not a lot of people are going to sit here and actually have the conversation of what's the likelihood of something like this to happen. There's no way of disproving it. The kid went to Vanderbilt and he went to USC. He's smart enough to know that there's no way to disprove a story like this, unless somebody is connected with the mob in Nashville, which good luck figuring.
Very likely.
No, but I'm saying though is that like no one's going to be able to go to a direct source and say and ask and find out, did you try to do this or not? No one will ever do that. I told
you in pre-production, the mob's not going to come out with a press release. Right?
Exactly my point.
I mean, so here's what I will say. Okay. I agree with everything that you just said in reference to that. However, the bigger point that I take from that is in today's society is what's very scary about all of this is, let's just say hypothetically the kid is true. Now, again, I've never seen a show, don't know the podcast. If you asked me to go find the clip, I couldn't even do it. Okay. Mm-hmm. I do think like the Keyshawn Booty thing, the thing that happened at Iowa and Iowa State, betting has become a bigger issue in college athletics than we're leaning on. A more massive issue than I think more that we're talking about. And the only time that we talk about it, Joe, is when we find a scandal.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's only in these instances that something negative like this happens. Do I think in the near future, I don't even think it has to be a mob individual. I think in the near future, there will be an instance of just a wealthy business owner. This literally happened with Arizona State basketball not that long ago. Business manager, a finance guy approaching a basketball player and asking him to shave a couple of points. I think that's certainly plausible to happen. But I mean, come on, man, the details just don't add up. None of it adds up. And this kid's a fucking clown is the most bullshit. The fact that he thought that something like this would actually catch on and somebody would take this seriously. It's a fucking joke.
I will say this. If I ever got to interview the kid, I'd ask him 3 questions.
Okay.
How do you know it was the mob? And if he says, okay, well, he told me he was a part of the mafia.
He showed him his mob ID card.
It was right next to his Blockbuster card.
Yeah, exactly.
Right next to his Costco card. Number 2, why was it $300,000? And were you asked to get other players involved? And depending on what he would say, I would question that because I think he's full of shit. I will say this. People who say that the mob, though, I saw a lot of comments underneath it. The mob doesn't exist anymore.
That's not true. That's not true.
That 1,000%. And you live in New Jersey or from New Jersey, I should say.
Well, and I mean, also went to school in Rhode Island, which actually has an even
deeper
mob presence than where I was from in New Jersey.
Exactly. So my point is, like, just go type in Google. Like, I think that there was an indictment where 28 people got arrested 2 weeks ago for mob activities, for union activities. So again, just calm down with it. All right.